today because the renowned and important worker on our behalf, probably, no, absolutely the most well-known lawyer, woman lawyer anyway, in the United States, Gloria Allred, joins us. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. It's an honor to be with you.
And vice versa, believe me. And I don't use that word lightly. I rail against that word honor. People stand up at any little meeting and say it's an honor, but this is an honor.
Okay.
So let's start.
As they say in New Jersey, it's likewise, I'm sure.
It's likewise, I'm sure. Yeah, we're both from those neck of the woods. I want to start with just a quick little personal thing on you, and that is that you're known as this all your career fighting for people's rights for justice, and especially women and justice. But I'm sitting in your beautiful office today with pictures of Cesar Chavez, the suffragettes from 1912. Who else have you got
Martin
here?
Luther King Jr.
Yes, and Amelia Earhart off to our back here.
Right.
So where did all this passion for what's right come into your life and your career?
I just have always felt that we need to make sure that we help to improve the condition and the status of women and bring women into the mainstream of American life in equal partnership with men. That's the motto of many commissions on the status of women. It certainly is something that I feel very strongly about. I attended and was graduated from an all-girls high school in Philadelphia High School for Girls. And I've always felt that women and girls are of value, should be considered as people of value, and that we should be able to enjoy and be afforded equal rights with men. But I have understood from the history, or I'll call it the herstory, of the suffragist movement, that no one ever gives us our rights. We've always had to fight to win them. So I feel very deeply that I have an opportunity to assist in that effort, that I have the ability to assist in that effort, and therefore that I have a moral duty to seize that opportunity and to help to empower women.
Well, the length and breadth, I'm sure all of you know of Gloria Allred's storied history, but I was doing some extra research for our interview today, and the years and years and the number of people and groups and laws, that you have stood behind, and you changed our society, basically. So thank you for the service and the work you do.
Thank you. As Gandhi said, we must be the change we wish to see in the world. So you've been a pioneer, you've been the trailblazer and a role model to many, and we all must act and be that change we wish to see in the world. We can't leave it to others. We each can and must make our own contribution in our own way, in many ways, every day. And that's how we help to improve the status of women and improve the conditions under which we must live.
Yeah, there you go. Agreed. Let's now dive into this, case of celebrity Bill Cosby. So millions of us have been following this case. You were there every day. As the way I understand it, if there are 59, is that the number now, who have come up with some sort of very similar, if not exact, statement in terms of the being drugged, being unconscious or close to unconscious, being violated. And I think one issue we really need to address today is then why a jury says, but then if that happened, go to the police, go to your family, to never talk to this guy again. He's a creep, he's a villain. They can't understand. I do, I've been through it. You do, you've been through it. But isn't the jury allowed to have expert witnesses on the issue of sexual assault by someone come in to say, you'll be surprised. People are intimidated. They feel that their careers, this is someone they've loved. This is someone they've held on a pedestal. It's not so cut and dry. A lot of women who have been violated by these people, mine was my coach. It's still my coach. And so it's hard to say now at the age of 67, I would have thrown him up against a wall. I would have gone to the principal. I would have gone to a lawyer. But at that time, I was young. I was impressionable. I thought, I'm just going to stay silent. But the jury and the public at large have trouble understanding that. Help us.
Well, there are 2 points that you just made that I would like to address.
Go.
The first has to do with why don't women go to law enforcement? And the second is, what if they continue contact with him afterwards?
Yeah.
As to the first point, we see the many, many vicious and often uncalled for attacks on accusers who do come forward. In this trial that just concluded, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania versus William H. Cosby, there were very, very significant attacks on both Andrea Constant. She, of course, is the person who is alleged to be the victim of Mr. Cosby, and he is charged with 3 felony counts, aggravated indecent sexual assault against Ms. Constant. And also there were attacks on the other accuser who testified, that's Kelly Johnson, and she is my client, also a very brave accuser. And so the attacks are sometimes the reasons that women don't come forward, sometimes for some of the 50, 60 accusers, and probably some who have not come forward. Maybe they felt that they didn't understand what happened because they believed that they were drugged, or weren't sure if they were, and couldn't have a full memory of what happened. Sometimes there was self-blaming. Sometimes there was fear of retaliation by a rich, powerful, famous celebrity or his supporters. And that might have been a fear based in fact, or maybe it was just a perceived fear of retaliation. So some never told their family, their friends, or their co-workers, or anyone. Some may have told a therapist, some may have, turned to alcohol or narcotics, or a combination of it, turned their rage inward, self-destructed in many ways, or turned their rage outward and somehow blamed other people. But, family members for things that they weren't responsible for. Finally, there are allegations that were filed in the case of Andrea Constant when she filed her lawsuit, and that caused many accusers to begin to come forward. In fact, 13 came forward at the time. They were Jane Doe's in her lawsuit. But in any event, this is why fear is a weapon that is used to keep women down, to keep them silent, to keep them subordinated. And it does allow, in general, perpetrators of sexual abuse to continue to abuse because they're counting on women suffering in silence. Now, why continue phone calls or seeing a person that may have abused you? There's an answer to that. In reference to Ms. Constant, she had a job. She was director of operations for the basketball team at Temple University. Mr. Cosby was a trustee and a supporter of the basketball team. She needed to continue business contacts, in other words, telephone calls with Mr. Cosby. That was part of her job, to keep good communication with the trustees. So although they put out the number of calls, there was no testimony about the nature of those calls, except that she did testify that she needed to speak with him. In reference to my client, Kelly Johnson, she alleges that after the incident, which she alleges and did testify to at the trial, the incident that she alleges occurred at the Bel Air Hotel between Mr. Cosby and herself, that she left the employ of William Morris. She had been working as the assistant to the agent for Mr. Cosby at William Morris. And she alleges that not long after the incident, in fact, shortly thereafter, she left William Morris and her employee there, and filed a workers' comp claim in which she alleges that some of her injuries were caused by Mr. Cosby. In any event, we have a lot of respect, I do, for the courage of both Andrea and Kelly, who testified. At the next trial, I'm hoping that the prosecutor will renew his motion to allow all 13 accusers or more to testify at the next criminal trial of Mr. Cosby, the second one. He did make a motion before the first trial to asking the court to allow him to call 13 what we call prior bad act witnesses, accusers, but the judge denied his request except that he only allowed one to testify. That's Kelly Johnson. Before this next trial, I hope the prosecutor will ask the court to state its reasons for declining the motion of the prosecutor to put on 13 witnesses.
But it'll be the same judge, no?
You're right. It will be the same judge, but we hope that the court will reconsider and state if he will or will not allow more accusers during the second trial, because I think they may make a difference. They may make a difference. The reason the prosecutor wants to put them on is he alleges that he wishes to try to prove to the jury that Mr. Cosby had a plan, a scheme, a design to drug and then and incapacitate women and then sexually assault them once they were incapacitated. Indeed, Mr. Cosby has admitted that he did provide 3 pills to Andrea Constant. He also admits that he did grope her breasts and digitally penetrate her genital area after she had taken the drugs. He did not testify that she consented. He also has stated that he believes that she's a truthful person. So I think that's important, because for anyone who may be in the court of public opinion or on the actual jury, I think it's important to take into consideration that Mr. Cosby himself has stated that he believes that Andrea Constant is a truthful person. I haven't heard any testimony that Mr. Cosby is thought to be a truthful person. At least no witness has testified to that.
I think this is where the confusion gets from that court of public opinion. Me and those millions of others witnessing this and reading about it every day. We say, this isn't a one-on-one, he said, she said. Already there's Miss Kelly, your client, Johnson. Already we have read, and if I'm not mistaken, you represent a good half of them, another 50-some people. I mean, 50, not even 3, which would be strong. 5 would be strong. 50 is just overwhelming. It would be different if, oh, he took me to his cabin and we started dancing, or, oh, no, it was on a plane. Every time it's the exact same, come on over, here's the blue pill, now you're almost out, and they wake up, in disarray. So it seems to me unconscionable. It seems to me beyond logic that any jury member doesn't know that there is a constant pattern here. So the way I understand it from today's reporting, and you're reporting every day, so tell me, the jury went in and immediately said they have an emotional response, he's not guilty. Then very quickly thereafter, they're talking, 10 of them come around to, nope, he's guilty. And 2 held out, so it became a mistrial, and now it will go to trial again. But don't those people in the jury understand these issues of, if they don't believe Miss Constant that, well, she still kept in touch with him, then clearly nothing that bad happened to her. Or isn't there an expert, sexual abuse expert, who gets on that, I swear to tell the truth, and educates them as to why these patterns of continued connection, for instance, happen?
Well, good point. And also, during this trial, the prosecution did call an expert on sexual assault to testify to some of the points that you just made. In addition, the other expert that was called was an expert on toxicology and the adverse impact on the central nervous system of certain pills that are depressants, such as Quaaludes, such as Benadryl. And yes, I think it's very helpful to try to pierce the myths and stereotypes and address the questions that many people have about, well, why doesn't a woman come forward more quickly? What are the impacts of drugs? By the way, it's really important to note that part of the testimony was, and this is from Mr. Cosby's own mouth, his admissions under oath in the deposition taken in the Andrea Constance civil suit which he filed against him, in which he admits to obtaining 7 prescriptions for Quaaludes with the intent to have sex with women, not with the intent to take them himself, but to provide them to women with the intent to have sex. Now, he did not testify that it was without the knowledge or consent that he provided them to women. He was asked that question, but there was an objection by his attorney, so he never responded to it. But that came into evidence. That was admitted over the objections of his own defense attorneys. So we have a lot of admissions by Mr. Cosby. But the real issue in this case was consent. One of the reasons that it's important that the prosecutors wanted to put on other accusers was to attempt to prove to the jury that if they would believe that Mr. Cosby had a plan to drug women and then incapacitate them, then he would know that a woman who had been drugged or had been intoxicated or drugged and intoxicated would not be able to consent. She would not be able to withdraw consent or provide consent or refuse consent if she was incapacitated by drugs. That's why it's really important that other accusers be able to testify. So we'll look forward to that particular decision on the motion if, as and when it is made again by the prosecutor.
Can you go into the 2 individuals who evidently could not come to a guilty verdict, and that's why we got to a mistrial? Can you get into projecting into their heads that what was it that kept reasonable doubt in their minds?
Well, I'm reading now that there's still other jurors, or maybe one other, who is questioning it and indicating that maybe that 10-2 at one point, but then maybe that was changed. And so we really don't know. The judge had asked the jurors not to talk about what other jurors did. Inevitably, since there is no court order on that, and since there is really there is no jurisdiction over the jurors at this point by the court, that is the former jurors, some of them are going to talk.
Yeah, sure.
Some of them have.
It's human nature, right?
Some of them have talked. So what I'm saying is the 10-2 the final vote? Was it a vote early on? What were the other votes? We don't know. I will say this. If it was 10-2 at some point, then I think that is support for the decision of the prosecutor to go ahead and refile this case and have a second trial.
Yeah, it was very close. And another
if
group
in fact
of individuals.
that's what it was, yes.
Yeah, if it was, yeah. You know, you say that the trial all revolved around really one issue, and that's consent. But it seems to me, and maybe this isn't legally the way to put it, but statute of limitations is also an issue here, and this is something near and dear to your current work in many states is to extend. So if we understand, if the law understands that in these types of cases it's frequent that someone doesn't speak up till much, much later because of embarrassment, because of fear. I'm going to, again, reiterate in my case with the abuse by my coach. As a teenager, I was not emotionally, psychologically capable of being strong. And look at me, I'm as strong as they come. It took me years to be able to speak that truth. And so, if in that courtroom all of these 50 plus people, or as we said before, 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 had been able to stand up and say, exact same thing happened to me, Constance, the exact same situation, the pill was the same color, I went down, I woke up in the same state, then we would have an entire different ball game at this in this particular trial. So why were the statute of limitations, first of all, put in the event of sexual abuse when it's not the case that people come forward quickly? And what are you doing to change it, and are you having success? How do you like these multi-part questions? It's like talking to the press at the White House every day. I got a 4-part question. So go ahead.
Yes, yes, and yes is the answer. You ask a multitude of very important questions, so let me just respond. Why do we even have the statute of limitations for criminal prosecution of rape and sexual assault? And the answer is a statute of limitations is an arbitrary time period set by law.
State by state.
It's state by state. It's also, well, there's also statute of limitations for federal crimes.
Okay.
But state by state for state crimes. And it's different for criminal prosecution of sexual assault and rape of an adult when she is an adult. It's different if it's an adult survivor alleging child sexual abuse.
Mm-hmm.
It's different if it's a civil case versus a criminal case. Bottom line, contact a lawyer to see what it is in your state. I've represented many adult survivors of child sexual abuse against the perpetrators of that abuse. I've also represented adult survivors of adult sexual abuse. And some of the survivors are men and some of them are women. Mm-hmm. I've represented groups of survivors, for example, and individuals. And often we can reach a confidential settlement. And so nobody has to know. No lawsuit has to ever be filed. Only the parties will know and will know the result. Having said that, we are working to change the law in many states, you're right. And I want to give credit to many of my clients who are accusers of Bill Cosby. In Nevada, I went and testified along with my client, Liesl Lublin, who was an accuser of Mr. Cosby, and we were successful in lengthening the statute of limitations by 10 years.
That's a
in
lot.
Nevada. Yes.
Which makes it a total of what, 17 years?
Well, 20.
Oh, 20.
For the criminal prosecution of rape and sexual assault. We did the same thing in Colorado with my then client, Beth Ferrier, and I went and testified, and we were with the governor when he signed the bill into law. Again, lengthening the statute of limitations by 10 years in Colorado. Then we came to California for what I call the big enchilada, to eliminate the statute of limitations for criminal prosecution of rape and sexual assault in California. And I testified along with some of my clients, including Kelly, I might add, and I also wrote an op-ed piece which was published in the Los Angeles Times on why we need to eliminate it. And I'm happy. And I met with the staff members of the governor and the governor's office. Took another one of my accusers to that meeting, and I'm happy to say that Governor Brown signed that law.
Is that right? I didn't know
And
that.
now it's eliminated in California. You know, for the future, it's not retroactive unless someone was within the statute at the time. But here's the point. The courthouse door should never be closed in the face of victims of rape and sexual abuse. It should remain open because, you know, in California, by the way, there's no statute of limitations on murder. There's no statute of limitations for the embezzlement of public funds. But if you steal something so precious from a woman, there was a statute of limitations for criminal prosecution. Now, instead of slamming the door in her face, it's open. She can feel that she can go to law enforcement and report. If a district attorney feels there is sufficient evidence to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt, there can be a prosecution. He can still, or she can still, decide not to prosecute, but reports should be made, because it may be that that individual is not the only one who was raped.
Sure.
There may be others that you don't know about, so it's important that the police have that information. Also, civil cases can be filed. Right now,
there's no statute on civil cases?
There is a statute on civil cases, and for adult survivors of child sexual abuse in California, for example, it's longer than it is for the criminal prosecution. Mm-hmm. So, for example, I'm representing Judy Huth. Judy Huth, in her lawsuit against Bill Cosby, alleges that when she was only 15 years old, that she became a victim of sexual misconduct by Mr. Cosby at the Playboy Mansion right here in Southern California. Right. And because it's an allegation of child sexual abuse, we have a longer period of time to file this lawsuit, and we have done so. And so, in fact, we're going to be in court next week on June 27th at which time the court would like to have a report from us on the outcome of the criminal case, the status of the criminal case. And it's a trial setting conference to decide when a trial should be allowed to commence on our civil case, because that's going to happen after the criminal cases are concluded. It's also a status conference. So we are proceeding on that track. The criminal case is proceeding on another track. By the way, in that case, in Judith's case, and she's also very courageous. She's never given an interview, but she's proceeding to assert her rights in this case. We have taken the deposition of Bill Cosby. It's under a protective order, so I'm sorry I can't share with you what he said. We also went back to court on a motion to compel him to appear for a second deposition. Of course, his attorneys opposed that, but we were successful. The court said, yes, he is ordered to appear for a second deposition, but he does not need to do so until the criminal case concludes.
Right.
So it may be a while till we can get that, but we want his second deposition. So the point is, there are some people in some states, like your age perhaps, who may have been abused when they were minors, when they were under the age of majority. Most places that's 18, some places that's 21, who may still have rights against the perpetrator.
Even if the statute
there may
has
be
its limitation.
In their state, there may be a statute which allows a civil lawsuit against a perpetrator of abuse for alleging child sexual abuse. For example, in California, and I shouldn't paraphrase the statute, but I'm going to do it anyway, and I'm going to just try to, but subject to everyone checking it out with the attorney of their choice who has some experience in child sexual abuse cases. In California, the statute runs, you have until age 26 to assert a civil claim, or within 3 years of your discovery that the injury that you have suffered is due to this child sexual abuse that was inflicted upon you, that you were forced to endure. So I'll give you an example. Some people turn to alcohol. Some people go to substance abuse. Some people become anorexic. Some people just go into very, very deep depressions, not recognizing that it may be on account of the child sexual abuse that they suffered. Some people have problems of trust in relationships. So some people go to therapy, and then at a certain point, they link it up. Okay, wait a minute. I started doing badly in school, for example, after the abuse. I turned to alcoholism. I became alcoholic. If they discover now, let's say at age 67, not you, but anyone else, that, there's a therapist or a doctor who may believe or conclude that the injuries that I'm suffering now and have suffered for some time, perhaps, are on account of the sexual abuse when I was a child. Then, within 3 years of that discovery, it may be that you or that other person or persons are within the period of time to file a civil lawsuit against the perpetrator for child sexual abuse.
Now, I gotta say, and you know which side I'm on all this, that seems to me pretty hard to prove. I mean, we're all such complicated beings, and there's so many factors that lead to our frailties, etc. I would think that's pretty hard to pinpoint. Oh, now I know why I've been behaving this way,
Okay, the answer is, in the same way that I have no ability to know how to swim in the way you do, because I'm just not a professional swimmer. I don't pretend to know anything about how to do that. Don't try to analyze your evidence yourself. Go see a lawyer who knows how to analyze this, who has experience. I can tell you, and I'm sure other attorneys who have a focus in this field can tell you, if you have sufficient evidence for a lawsuit or for a confidential settlement. That's important. And never discount your own word, your own testimony. Because people say, oh, I have no evidence. Well, your testimony is evidence.
Mm-hmm.
You count. You matter. Your words are of value. And there are other things we look for to tell you if we think you have sufficient evidence to proceed with a lawsuit. But you need to consult an attorney. I say just because you have a heart doesn't mean you can do heart surgery on yourself.
Yeah.
Okay, and just because you know that you had the experience, don't start going into drawing conclusions. Well, I don't have any case or I don't have any evidence. Go see a lawyer. Check it out.
Yeah. No, that makes good sense. We've got some listeners want to ask you questions, but I had one other point here, and that is a lawyer from California wrote me today and asked me to ask you that I do believe it's called rule or whatever, number 1108 in California, that would be a rule of evidence that allows past similar sexual conduct without regard to statutes to come in. So it's a proof or a conversation of a disposition to commit acts. And why is that not allowed in Pennsylvania if it's allowed in California? Well, is it not? Am I reading this wrong from this fellow?
I think I know what this person is talking about, and that has to do with essentially what I described, the prior bad act witnesses.
Yeah.
The other accusers coming in under certain circumstances. We have something similar to that in California. So we believe, for example, in our civil lawsuit, that we will be able to put on other accusers who allege same or similar acts.
To prove disposition, yeah.
Well, I wouldn't say to prove disposition.
Okay.
But we'll put it on in the way that is required by law, and we think it'll be supportive of our case.
Okay. Boy, I think I just went to law school 101, getting ready for law school. So
here's the point: is women have been empowered.
Yeah.
Women have a voice. So many of the accusers who couldn't file a civil lawsuit, couldn't go to the police in reference to what they allege now that Mr. Cosby did to them, have taken this lemon and made lemonade by working to change the laws, to win changes in statute of limitations, to help others in the future, even though it won't benefit them from a legal point of view.
Yeah.
Certainly will help others. So I'm very, very proud of them that they've done that.
Right on. And I'm sorry, Gabby Fish is sitting off camera with a couple of your questions,
Okay.
but I still got one more. And that is, let's just take, I know what you're going to say on this, but I want to hear you say it. Let's just say that there is sympathy out there. That there's some people who say, look, the guy's 79 years old. He's legally blind at this point. He brought a lot of comedic, entertainment to people through the years. The court of public opinion is clear. He's a creep. He's done all this stuff, and he's never going to work again. He's been thrown off the board of this and thrown out of the Hall of Fame of that. Isn't that enough? Let him go crawl away and live a private life forever. Why do we have to prosecute him and get him behind bars?
Okay. Well, with respect, although some of those allegations have been made by supporters of Mr. Cosby, I would disagree with some of them. First of all, I don't think he's intending to crawl away into that dark night. As a matter of fact, today, some of his supporters have announced that he's planning to do a tour this summer, and he's going to give speeches in reference to sexual assault and how to protect against false allegations.
Okay, that's a different story.
Okay, well, no, I'm saying, so that if he's so incapacitated from a health point of view, or visually challenged, or because of his age can't do certain things, I think the evidence is now to the contrary that he can and will do some very active speaking this summer. Now, he's going to talk about, how to prevent false allegations. Of course, I hope that if he does these workshops, that he will advise those who attend the best way to avoid allegations would be not to drug and sexually incapacitate.
Yeah, start there.
And incapacitate women and, not sexually assault them. That would be the best advice. So if he can do all of this I think he can sit in a courtroom if he can be on a stage.
He can withstand a trial.
Yeah, I think so. And by the way, so he'll be 80, and I'm just, 4 years younger than he is. I think he can withstand a second trial.
Yeah, and by the way,
I
just my little personal statement on this, and I'm always reluctant to bring up, my case because, but it only represents millions of women around the world, and that is to say, my perpetrator has passed away now. But in those later years when people would say to me, he's old now, can't you find some forgiveness in your heart? And I say, it's not a question of forgiveness, it's a question of justice. Who was around when for years and years and years I felt the low self-esteem, I felt the hatred of body, I sat across from psychiatrists and psychologists over and over and over and over for years? Where is the payment? Where is the justice on that he gets to just laugh this away and go on to live a good life? So with Cosby, we say it really all comes down to what we said about you in the beginning. You're here to fight for equality and justice, exactly. And this is justice.
Justice and accountability.
Yeah.
And, women are often told we're supposed to be taking care of men.
Yeah.
Taking care of children, taking care of everybody.
Yeah.
What about us?
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
We have a right to take care of ourselves.
Yeah.
We have a right to make those who inflict suffering on us, injustice upon us, we have a right to make them accountable, to do what we can.
Of course we do.
No matter the result.
Yeah.
It's very empowering to women and to girls and to boys to move forward in a thoughtful way to help to make those perpetrators accountable. Because in doing so, it not only helps us to move forward, but it also is going to help to protect others in the future.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So that's what we want to do.
Yeah.
And no one should make us feel that we have to apologize for doing that, because we are the ones who are helping to win change and to protect future generations.
Yes, you are. Gabby, I'm sorry to keep you all waiting for so long,
okay.
But Gloria's, so astute in her comments. We wanted to really get this chance to get her messages out.
You want me to do answer one or two more comments real quickly?
I'll try to make
we got a couple shorter answers.
Yeah. So
you take your time.
There's a comment from Holly Span, just to give you a nice comment here. She's checking in from Nashville, Tennessee. Both of you are my heroes. Thank you. She's been participating in the chat
thank
today.
you very much, Holly. I'll actually be in Nashville very soon, in
July,
for a case. So
Is
go
that
ahead.
right? Okay.
Yes.
Tiffany Smith says, "Hi, Ms. Gloria Allred. Why did it take these women years to come forward with their allegations? I understand fear of being ridiculed or subjected to being treated as a pariah, but that it was a long time. Asking as a law student."
Okay, and I think I answered that a little bit earlier.
It could be she wasn't on yet.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
that's possible. But, there are many, many reasons, sometimes different for each individual. Sometimes there's a common theme. Sometimes it's self-blaming. Sometimes it's fear of what will happen, and that's why it's important to have a support system. Seek the advice of a private attorney before you move forward, and understand what your options are and the benefits versus the risks. Fear of retaliation, and so getting information is empowering and helps to diminish the fear.
Yeah, and let me just say, what's the young lady's name again?
Tiffany.
Tiffany, as a law student, this is where I'm asking, why isn't the jury apprised of the psychological timber of a young person who goes through something like this? You say for a long, long time, I must have been such a bad person. This must have been my fault for this to happen to me. I can't understand it. You're self-blaming. And look at me. I own the tiger by the tail. I walk around telling people they can chase their dreams. I am that person, believe it or not. Underneath, on a cellular level, I'm still that little girl who was molested, and it was my fault. Still, at the age of almost 68. So, people who aren't as strong as I am, imagine you go into a corner of your mind and you just say, this didn't happen, I didn't want this to happen, this was all my fault, I'm never going to tell anybody. Do you know what it's like to have to use words like the penis entered X% of the vagina in front of people, your own mother? It's degrading stuff to even go back and have to open up all those issues. So there are many logical reasons that people wait a long time to finally have the courage. A woman, I do a lot of public speaking, as Gloria does. A woman in her 80s came up to me. I mentioned my situation because I tell a life story on stage. Sometimes I tell a little bit of this part of my life. Sometimes I don't. The older I get, it gets to be an issue that was farther back in my life than current, so which is a good thing. But a woman in her 80s came up to me, tears brimming in her eyes. She took me to the side a little bit. She held my hands and she said, "I never even told my husband, who's gone now. He was my best friend, but I couldn't. And when I heard you today, I thought, if this has happened to people like you, then I gotta have the guts to admit, at least to myself and to the people closest to me, that it happened to me." So it was her stepfather. It happened over years of her youth, and she still lived a life. She had a husband, she had children. That doesn't mean that she wasn't damaged and that she felt, tremendous internal injury over this. So you'd be surprised that woman was in her 80s and never told anybody, and I was the first person she told. So you can, as a law student, you should start studying this and look into why people take so long and why the statute of limitations need to be extended.
And I want to add to those very elegant and insightful words by Diane, that this is a situation often where the perpetrator of the abuse has engaged in grooming the victim, the target of the sexual abuse. In other words, he has worked to build the trust so that she would not ever expect that this abuse would ever happen in this relationship. It may be a teacher who was the perpetrator. It may be a coach. It may be a high school principal. It may be a priest, a rabbi, a minister. It may be a medical doctor. It may be someone in a position of trust. And after that trust is built, it is then betrayed by the act of abuse. And because often this person is a respected person, a trustworthy person, at least considered that way, in the family, in the school, in the community, in the occupation in which she is involved, she sometimes feels that she will not be believed against the denial of this person who is considered to be more powerful, more credible, and more of a person of value than she is considered to be. So we have to look at all of this and understand that there is a complicated set of circumstances which help to explain why a victim does not report and why she or he may believe that no one will believe them if they tell. It's important then to help children to understand they have a right to say no, and that if someone touches them in a place where they should not be touching them, that they need to tell mommy or daddy or someone they trust, and should not believe if threats are made about what will happen if they tell, that they should still tell anyway, that they will be safe and that they will be believed.
Well, Gloria, I know you're very busy. Should we just take one more? Let's take one more, and then we're going to let you go and get back to your good work.
Okay.
One more quick one. This is from Bill Todd. He said, "I would like to hear Ms. Allred's opinion on the Kobe Bryant rape case in 2003, in which his lawyer smeared the victim and threatened her to the point that she dropped the case. It's disgusting that high-profile athletes get away with this on a far too frequent basis."
Well, I certainly deal with athletes and their attorneys. Often people say, "Well, Gloria, are you interested in sports?" And I say my only connection with sports is suing athletes or lodging claims against them and working out settlements for the victims of those sports celebrities. I will just say this: I'm not sure that she dropped her case. As I recollect, it was settled. It was resolved, perhaps a confidential settlement. So it didn't proceed to trial, that's correct, but apparently there was an outcome. Yes, she was attacked. And we expect always for defense attorneys, and I'm not that I agree with it, but we expect that what they will do is try to put everybody else on trial other than their own client, the defendant. Put on the victim on trial, try to make accusations against the district attorney, against the court, against any supporters of the person who is alleged to be the victim. This is what they do. This is what we call their MO. It's their modus operandi. And so whomever is representing the person who is alleged to be the victim, the plaintiff in the lawsuit, the alleged victim in a criminal case, needs to be prepared to understand the best way to approach those attacks, to respond to those attacks, or not to respond to those attacks. No person who is an alleged victim should go through anything like this alone. Support is needed, good judgment is needed, people with experience are needed in order to form a team to support, defend, and represent a person who is a victim.
So Bill, for you and all of Gloria and my fans, and hopefully new fans today, thank you so much for tuning in. I've learned a great deal. I thank you for your work, and we'll be tuning in to all of your work, but also particularly the new Cosby trials that comes out. When will that come about again, by the way?
The court has indicated that it would like the trial to begin within 120 days.
Okay.
So in around 4 months, possibly October, we can expect to see the second criminal trial of Bill Cosby.
Well, all I can hope is that more of those parallel cases, accusers, are allowed to have a voice there, this time. Thank you, Gloria, for your time.
Thank you. My pleasure.
It's been
Keep
wonderful.
up the great work
You look
that you
great
do.
in orange.
I'm so proud of you. Thank you.
Thank you, honey.